Now I would like to introduce our next panelist. Her name is Professor Aurora Vergara. She is an Afro-Colombian scholar who holds a PhD of sociology from the University of Massachusetts Amherst. She is the winner of the Martin Diskin Award from Latin America Studies Association for the best PhD dissertation that integrates activism and rigorous knowledge production. She was nominated as one of the 20 best leaders in Colombia by the magazine Semana and Fundación Liderazgo y Democracia in 2016. Please forgive my pronunciation. Professor Vergara is director of the Center for Afro-diasporic Studies and is a professor of sociology at ICESI University. She is an anthologist, author, and compiler of books such as Decolonizing Worlds, Contributions of Black Intellectuals to Colombian Social Thought. Her latest publication is Race in Global Perspective in the Oxford Bibliographies of Sociology. Please welcome Professor Aurora Vergara.
Thank you, Dr. Harrison, for your presentation, and the pronunciation was great. Greetings, everyone from Colombia. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I would like to start my remarks by thanking the organizers of this event. I am honored and humbled by the opportunity to be part of this important event. I also thank the President of Ghana for his support to this endeavor. I thank the Secretary General and the Chairman for their opening remarks and the excellent speakers of the panel on the role of the African diaspora, on the diaspora in higher education. I salute our moderator and my co-panelists today, Professor Molefi Asante, Professor Ezrah Aharone, Professor Mohamed Camara, and Professor Kojo Janka. I'm also very thankful because I shared with them the Academic Council of the Pan-African Heritage World Museum recently launched. So all protocols observed and all prizes to the AAU for this event. I would like to accompany my opening remarks with a 3-minute video that speaks to the aspect of decolonializing the curriculum. I bring to this panel the argument that Latin America is this very important locale to connect African universities to HBCUs and also Latin American universities that are trying to promote Afrocentric knowledge. I will bring to you Sankofa, a group of Danza Afro, and they are promoting this artistic performance in which Honorable Rafael Palacio, portrayed in the video, will tell you the complexity of producing knowledge from an Afrocentric perspective in Colombia. I think he has a powerful argument from which I would like to depart. So I will share my screen very quickly so that you can have a hold of this argument, and then I'll continue with my remarks. Just give me 1 minute.
En varias ocasiones he recibido una clase magistral sobre las costumbres y la cultura a la que pertenezco por parte de antropólogos, sociólogos, historiadores e investigadores del arte y la cultura afrodescendiente.
Just let me pause there to make sure that everybody is watching the screen. And anyway, somebody can let me know. Is it working, Dr. Harrison?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
¿Cómo es posible que esas personas, mujeres y hombres blancos, la mayoría de ellos, vayan por el mundo esparciendo sus verdades sobre mis propias raíces? ¿Cuál es el privilegio que les permite investigar nuestras costumbres y conocimientos? Les he escuchado en silencio, de manera atenta, en cada cena a la que me han invitado. Debo confesar que la incomodidad me ha invadido de pies a cabeza, negándome a disfrutar los alimentos que con tanto cariño han servido en la mesa. Por su lado, los expertos negrólogos no paraban de ofrecer anécdotas coloridas que flotaban por el aire, sin esforzarse por cruzar un recuerdo que pudiera conectar nuestras vivencias en los territorios afrocolombianos, en Burkina Faso o cualquier otro país de África por los que tanto ellos como yo hemos transitado. Constantemente fracasé en el deseo y en el intento. Ellos siempre hablaban solos. Algo en mí nunca cesará de preguntarse: si hemos caminado en las tierras de hombres íntegros, ¿por qué no puedo sentir una conexión o vínculo de nuestras experiencias? Estos encuentros registran la inmortalidad de la colonialidad, sujetos que defienden el estatus social, académico, económico y profesional, conferenciando sobre nosotros. Bajo una luz cenital, ejecutan su performance individual sin compartir con su categorizado objeto de estudio, informante y supuesto subordinado. El público les aplaude de pie, porque reconocen en ellos la autoridad para analizar y contar nuestras historias, y en algunos casos hasta les otorgan el derecho de develar al mundo la esencia misma de nuestro ser. Me alejé, nunca más supe de ellos.
Honorable Rafael Palacios in this artistic performance is letting us know that we have several scholars around Latin America claiming that they have the true knowledge about Afro-descendants or about Africans. And through this artistic performance, I bring to you a critique of this perspective. I think these pieces, these artistic performances can be very important tools of knowledge to question these ideas and to bring to the classroom new tools to decolonize our curriculum. As the director of one of the few do things centered on the African diaspora in the region, I reflect on the opportunities and challenges of building and strengthening relationships between Afro-diasporic research centers in Latin America, US historically Black colleges and universities, and African universities. We have started this wonderful relationship with Ezrah in Ghana, and it has proven that students can learn.
لدينا مشكلة أن الطلاب يأتون إلينا من مناطق مرحلة، وأنه ينبغي عليهم معرفة لغتهم، تاريخ لغتهم الأم، وتقديم أفكار جديدة بشأن وجود النساء الأفاقرة في جميع أنحاء العالم. وأنني أريد أيضاً التحدث عن
matrix center or matrix a framework of knowledge can be a laboratory of death. And I bring this argument because I think that these universities of this setup can kill our spirits, that they kill our very existence, and they can kill also our very the existence of our people. I believe that this concept can help us to reflect on the complex vulnerabilities of Africans and Afro-descendants around the globe, particularly in these times in which our lives continue to be rendered disposable, exacerbating enduring gender and racial inequalities in the COVID-19 era. I look forward to future discussions in the remaining sessions. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Vergara. Those were very, very insightful comments. And again, as our participants should be able to see, that we are all quite well aligned in our thoughts and comments on this topic, and it promises to be a rigorous and insightful discussion that we will have for the remainder of this afternoon and for 2 full hours tomorrow. And so last but not least, I would like to introduce our next panelist, Professor Mohamed Kamara. He is a professor and chair of the Department of African Studies at Howard University. By profession, he is a professor of history, philosophy, and journalism. He holds a PhD from Northwestern University in history on a Fulbright scholarship, a DES in philosophy from the University of Kanarki, and an advanced professional degree in journalism from the University of Dakar. He is a member of the Academic Council of the Pan-African Heritage World Academy based in Ghana. In 2009, Professor Kamara was voted Outstanding Teacher of the Year at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, where he served as Director of the McNair Scholars Program, Speaker of the Faculty Senate, and Associate Vice President for Academics. Previously, Professor Kamara served as Associate Chair of the Department of Philosophy at the University of Kanarki, journalist for the National Radio Television in Guinea, correspondent for Radio France International, speechwriter for the Presidency of the Republic of Guinea, and president of the University Press of Kanarki. He is the author of many peer-reviewed articles, books, book chapters, and a number of books, the most recent of which is Health and Human Security in the Mano River Union, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Cote d'Ivoire. Welcome, Professor Mohamed Kamara.
Thank you very much, Dr. Harrison. I am very honored and humbled to be part of this very distinguished panel and to have been invited by my respected colleague, Dr. Yanka, to be a part of this panel and this momentous gathering of the Association of African Universities. I would like also respectfully to thank His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Ghana, whose leadership has resonated across the world, across the global African world. And to thank the Association of African Universities for this initiative. And I would like to thank also Professor Molefi Kete Asante. And every time I have the opportunity to listen to him, it takes me, in terms of the wisdom of his reflections, it takes me to the time when people of my generation in Guinea had the exceptional blessing of almost every month having the opportunity to listen to President Kwame Nkrumah, who was then residing in Guinea, to President Amilcar Cabral, who was also based in Guinea and fighting for his country's independence, to Stokely Carmichael, also known as Kwame Toure, who resided in Guinea and was working for President Nkrumah and the Pan-African Organization, and to Mama Africa, Miriam Makeba. All these heroes of global Africa, now as I am sitting here and participating here, the air I breathed with those people are coming back to me and calling me Colette to do my job with you, esteemed colleagues. When I joined Howard University in January 2017, I had worked mostly, if not only, in non-HBCU universities in the United States. And I had experienced how those universities strategized how to reach out to what Professor Asante so rightfully called the pan-European academic influence. And I was even part of some of the negotiations between one of the universities I worked for, which was an aeronautical university, and institutions in Europe and elsewhere. So when I got to Howard University, I said to myself, this is the time and the place to put to good use whatever I had learned in Africa and in this country to help connect Africa and the African American community and the diaspora through higher education, which is my line of duty. And the College of Arts and Sciences at Howard University soon had a new dean who is also a very strong Pan-Africanist. And the two of us have been working together. And under his leadership, the College of Arts and Sciences developed a 5-year strategic plan. And my department also developed a 5-year strategic plan. And a great deal of both plans is how to further advance meaningfully the interactions, collaborations, and cooperations between HBCUs and African institutions of higher education. And on that note, I'm going just to focus on 2 or 3 of those. One is Howard's engagement with the University of South Africa, UNISA. As you certainly know, and Professor Asante pointed that out, it's one of the top universities in Africa in many different ways. So at this point, the Howard University, through the College of Arts and Sciences, is developing a joint graduate certificate in African leadership. By African leadership here, we mean a curriculum that will connect the sense of communal and professional and ethical leadership in African cultures and civilization, and the heritage of the African American community in terms of community leadership, spiritual leadership, professional leadership, and ethical leadership. And combine these 2 perspectives and provide a fast-forward education to those who will participate in the certificate. The Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs, which is based in UNISA, and the Obama Young African Leadership Institute through the Obama Foundation have been reached out to be essentially the co-chaperones, if you will, of this project, so that we bring to bear 2 of the most far-reaching thinkers of the African and African-American leadership elite of our time, President Thabo Mbeki and President Barack Obama. Another project that we are pursuing is in Angola, which has been facilitated by the US Embassy in Luanda, Angola. And that project is actually threefold. One is the creation of a program of English as a second language, because Angola is not an Anglophone country. The second one is a program of Afro-American studies. And these 2 projects, we're working on them, and these programs are aimed at, in the medium term, into growing into full-fledged academic departments. The third leg of that Angolan program is the enhancement of the academic structure of the Tokoist Institute of Advanced Studies. The Tokoist Institute is an institution of higher education created by the Tokoist Church, which is one of the top institutions or spiritual organizations in Angola that are essentially based on African spirituality as connected to Christianity. So we have been working on these, And from all that experience, we are building in the Department of African Studies, the Howard Africa Policy Institute, which is designed or will be designed as an interdisciplinary and multi-institutional think tank that is centered on global Africa. And in this institute, the term Africa, the term Africans, unless specified otherwise, always refers to global Africa. Africans on the continent and the people of African descent worldwide, which means that we need to reflect on the decolonization of education, the elimination of the meta-colonial miseducation of our people, not only in Africa, but also everywhere, so that the curriculum that we're going to develop and teach our young men and women will reflect who we are and what we aim to become, not only tomorrow, the year after, but in the long run. Thank you much.
Thank you very much, Professor Kamara. Those were very insightful comments, and I think a perfect bridge into our general discussion. As a reminder for some and for those who have joined us since the opening announcements about how the panel is going to proceed, we have approximately 30 minutes remaining in our panel for today, though it started late because the morning plenary session ran over. I do not necessarily know that the panels will run long today. I will wait for our MC and our technology team to indicate to me exactly how much time we have left in the panel. But because regardless of whether we run over a little bit or not, we have limited time for discussion today. We will not be able to get to everyone's questions. If you have questions or comments, please put them in the chat and make them visible to everyone. And our MC and tech backup are sending me those questions in order to ask as many as I can. But that said, though we have limited time for discussion today, our panel continues tomorrow at the same time, and we have 2 full hours to engage in robust discussion. So please do not be discouraged if we do not get to your question today. We hope that you will join us again tomorrow for a much more extended conversation. And so I want to dive into that conversation now and touch on a number of topics that I, as a moderator, have, and that some of our panelists got together and discussed a bit in preparation for today. And Professor Kamara, it is particularly a delight for me to be moderating this panel since you served as my dissertation committee chair. So now the tables are turned and I get to ask you questions. Following up on the remarks from the panelists, particularly our keynote speaker, Professor Asante, there is a running theme here about reclaiming our own knowledge and redefining for ourselves what that looks like and moving forward with that in concrete terms. The work, Howard, you just mentioned with Howard University sounds like it is beginning to move in that direction. But I want us to start with the conversation of what that truly means. And for me, having studied at a predominantly white university in my undergraduate years and then gone on to Howard and just stayed at Howard for a very long time, One thing I can say in my experience in both places reflects on some of Professor Yanka's comments about the fact that we do not know each other when we encounter each other, at least here in the United States and other parts of the diaspora. We have these stereotypes about one another that are produced from a Eurocentric perspective that are designed purposely to keep us divided. How can we begin to break down those barriers so that when we engage with each other, we engage with each other from an informed perspective in order to build together? So Professor Kamara, if you could start with how the institutions and programs at Howard University may begin to do that. And then I would like to go backwards and ask Professor Yanka to comment on that. And Professor Vergara, because of the fact that she is in Colombia, and quite often we lose sight of the diaspora outside of the United States because the United States is so privileged in discussions and centered in discussions about the African diaspora. Professor Kamara.
Thank you very much, Dr. Harrison, for this very thoughtful question. Very concretely, let's take the Joint Graduate Leadership Certificate. The curriculum that we have developed, Howard University developed, I believe, 3 courses, South Africa, 3 courses. Each of these courses is aimed at drawing from the African community that is predominant in on each side. Let's say, for example, for Howard University, our courses will be in large measure, not exclusively, but in large measure, informed by the African American sense of ethics, family values, community leadership. What does, for example, what does a church mean for an African American community, historically, culturally, morally, spiritually, for instance? What does the minister mean when he or she addresses issues of leadership from the family circle all the way to the community? And what has the African American community developed as a system, not just disparate ideas, but a system, a political culture, a social culture, a moral culture that holds it together, makes it resilient, and makes it challenging to immoral leadership, whether it's from within or from the outside. And the same thing in UNISA. The curriculum that is being developed will also, there it will be a little bit more complicated because it will aim to draw from a variety of representative African cultural values, cultural themes, and so on. Of course, you know, you can't put the whole of Africa in even one encyclopedia, let alone in one syllabus or one course. But to give that indication that by leadership we mean here primarily and fundamentally African leadership. But we have also to be mindful of the fact that Africa is part of a wider world. And Africa, we would like Africa to play a major role in world affairs in the 21st century and going forward. So it's not like this certificate intends to make Africa an isolated island in the middle of nowhere. No, to make Africa, or to bring our young men and women who will be taking this certificate to the roots of their Africanity and make them more prepared to be meaningfully functional Africans in global Africa, in the global world, without losing ourselves, losing our souls into a world that was designed without our consent.
Thank you. Professor Yanka, your response.
Yeah, thank you. Several levels. On the continent of Africa, I know that the ministries of education have a lot to do with agenda setting. So I would recommend that the ministries first make history or African studies a compulsory subject in primary, secondary, and university levels. Now, that is important. I know some schools where no history is being taught at the moment. It's important that it's not, and when we introduce history, it's not just anybody's history. It should be African history, African philosophy, African ideas, African indigenous knowledge, African traditional systems. All that should start from secondary school. Now, when we get to the university, the governing councils, the board of regents in America, they should all be involved. That kind of orientation should be at that level so that they help to write curricula that are relevant to today. Most of them just approve, maybe because of accreditation council demands, but accreditation itself can be pushed if the ministries of education and various levels of accreditation bodies in various countries agree to what we are saying, that what we are teaching now in schools, both there and on the continent, both in the diaspora and the continent, is totally alien to us. So when we go back to what Woodson Carter said, and which Professor Molefikete Asante talked about, if we are going to change the way miseducation has gone, we should have a thorough and transformational attitude towards the whole matter. Governments must be involved on the continent, and Board of Regents in all the HBCUs should also be involved. I know HBCUs that do not have African Studies departments. Where they have it, they only have the African American Studies, but nothing related to African Studies. So all those can be taken care of by the Board of Regents.
Thank you very much. And Professor Vergara, when it comes to this study of our culture and our history and who we are, as I've said, quite often when we discuss Africans outside of the continent, quite often the US is privileged. Indeed, even to some degree, the name of this panel discussion about HBCUs, where do they exist? For the most part, by and large, they exist here in the United States, but yet we have a very vast diaspora, as Professor Asante said, all over the world: Australia, Japan, South America, the Caribbean, and other parts of Europe. How can we begin to break down these barriers of understanding and knowing who we are and creating a holistic curriculum or study of Africa and the diaspora that is inclusive of all aspects of the diaspora, with a sensitivity toward the full diaspora culture?
Thank you, Professor Harrison, for your excellent question. I think that building on what Professor Kamara and Professor Yanka has said, I would suggest, or I will say that in the Afro-diasporic Studies Center, we are proposing to teach through what connects us. So for example, Adinkra symbols. We had several manifestations of the Adinkra symbols in Colombia. So we are building curriculum through the symbols so that students can identify what they see in their own houses, but have no knowledge of the history of these symbols. And that has proven very important because we start with the symbol, and then we strengthen abilities that we know are a challenge, for example, for school exams. So the Adinkra symbol is the skills for students to get to know their history, but at the same time, to improve their writing, to improve in mathematics, and then to get a higher result in the school exams. So we work with primary schools, with secondary schools, and also we develop this methodology so that they can increase the results and then have a better chance to get to the university. And while we're working in their communities, we produce knowledge based on the songs, for example, the blues songs or songs that traditionally are sung to the deaf. And that help us to create this holistic movement, this holistic moment of knowledge creation, Afrocentric knowledge creation that is also sending the message through the community that what they are living in these specific locations is connected to the continent of Africa. And it is very deep and profound what happens, because most women will say when they see, for example, songs from Ghana or from Nigeria, they say like, we are the same. And one student also said, once he said, oh, my song is important because I can increase my results in the university. I can increase the results so they can get to the university, but at the same time, now I know where I am from. So I think that teaching through what connects us can be a very important tool to producing this knowledge and continue developing our own curriculum.
Thank you very much. And Professor Asante and Aharone, both of you have traveled extensively and worked and studied and taught in universities throughout the diaspora. When I was thinking about this discussion and this panel, and the fact that we do indeed have Professor Vergara here, and I think that is a great deal of credit goes to those who organized this panel in intentionally including representation outside of the United States in this discussion about strengthening relationships in higher education throughout the African diaspora. And in that reflection, I thought about the fact that really, if we think about the diasporic connection, it really should look kind of like an Anansi web. That connects us across the globe, but we often think of it as a singular line between the United States and Africa and back. But if we're talking about diasporic connections, I sometimes wonder if Anansi is waiting for us to learn the lesson from the tricks the colonizers have played on us to keep us divided regarding our own identities. Can you, Professor Asante, and you, Professor Aharone, talk about your ideas of how we can begin to actually build that web, to knit that web of connection across universities, even those universities in the diaspora that are not necessarily African-centered, but have African departments, and how we can build African departments in universities that do not currently have them?
Yes, I will attempt to answer that very complex question and deep question. And certainly I love Anansi, and Anansi is always playing tricks. And one of the tricks that Anansi played on us was that the slave ships, the European slave ships, and we should always say European slave trade. It was not an African slave trade, it was a European slave trade. But the European ships put some of us in Jamaica, some of us in Haiti, some of us in Virginia, some of us in what is now Colombia and so on. But we may have been from the same villages in Africa. In other words, Aurora may very well be related to me, generations back. We don't know. You see what I'm saying? This is a trick of Anansi that we assume, mainly because of languages and of the various oppressions that we have suffered, that we are totally different. Well, we may have come from the same villages or the same towns in Guinea or Senegal or Ghana or wherever, Nigeria, wherever, you see. So in a sense, we are one family, And we are a family that can be reconstructed along the lines of having a Pan-African academy. And one way I think that we can go about this, and I certainly appreciate all of the suggestions that have been mentioned, in particular the work that Professor Kamara is doing at Howard and others, and certainly Professor Kojo Yanka knows this as well because he's working on the Pan-African Heritage Museum, that we can speak together now because we're beginning to get more common understandings, more common information. We're not exactly on the same pages yet, but we're certainly in the same book. And by being in the same book now, certain things resonate with us. And I think that music has done that to a large degree, that our music is global, and it is also international and Pan-African. So that's been one. I think our art has been that way. Our dance is certainly that way. So there's certain things now that we're beginning to see, oh yeah, because you can go anywhere and talk about Fela. And everybody knows, so there's something there in terms of this connectedness. But I wanted to say that there is something else that I think might be useful. Years ago, and this is again dating myself, in many ways because it was one of the glorious times. And Tommy Sankara had a conference. He called a conference in Ouagadougou. And I was very young at the time. And this conference was for the Institute of the Black Peoples, it was called. And the Institute of the Black Peoples, the idea behind this, and he died before he could bring it off, but it still happened. And that's another story, but we won't tell that story. But his idea was that with all these African people in the diaspora and all the Africans on the continent with different languages, why not have a center, an international center, where at least 5 or 6 languages are being translated every day so that we can read the same documents. But there's no reason why Du Bois should not be able to be read in Yoruba or in Zulu. I mean, why not have a center, an institute, Institute of the Black Peoples, it was called, where there would be people who would be working, and this would be funded. It would have been beautiful to be funded by the AU, but certainly the AU has financial issues, but that's another question too. But it should have, it should not have, but it does have, right? But there's a possibility that we can do these things. That's how you have to build a Pan-European, the African Academy. The Pan-European Academy is built with funding, private, sometimes public funding, to sponsor awards and to give, to create contests. The best one to do this and to do that. And so to build a culture, we've got to build a Pan-African Academy. And we can do this if we have some sort of way of translating works that are written in indigenous languages or in African languages, I should say, because all languages are indigenous, but written in African languages and translated to other African languages and even to European languages. And that way we have common information.
Thank you, Professor Asante. Professor Aharone.
Yeah, thank you. And I think a lot of times there's an assumption that people know already. And I think a large part of what we have to do is, as someone earlier said, propagandizing what it is that we do. And I say that in a way of modern day marketing and promoting. Because if you look at HBCUs, which I said there are over 100 of them, at least on paper, you know, there are even more Black professors. And so when we're talking about an engagement like this, I think it's important to say, well, we don't have to wait on the university. We are professors ourselves. We all have our own networks of independent relations and scholarship and things that we do. So the 10 of us who are here today represent what could become a critical mass to change the way the diaspora here in America relates to Colombia. We have Professor Vergara right there. And I'm very interested in working with other diaspora counterparts. And in that context, you know, we've begun the very idea that Dr. Asante just described, that, you know, nothing is preventing us from making those types of engagements happen. You know, when we look at Marcus Garvey and the things that he did, you know, he didn't have internet, he didn't have a cell phone, he didn't have any of the modern technology, yet, you know, he had millions of followers. So in the same way now, you know, we have all of this modern technology where instantaneously we can be in touch with each other and share ideals and so forth. And so, as I said, it's about the end use of the knowledge that we have. So I'm reaching out and looking forward to working with different counterparts. Honorable Kojo Yanka and I, we signed a partnership at Delaware State the end of last year to do just that in terms of connecting with media and social media platforms to promote what it is that we believe in. And so the media component plays a very large role in what it is that we can do in terms of the propagandizing of it in creating new networks and engagements with people and other institutions. So I think that if we gathered ourselves and looked at the pros and cons and put together strategies to make greater things happen, you know, like Garvey said, what one man has done, others can do.
Thank you very much for those comments. We are nearing the end of our time, but not quite out of time. And so I want to turn to questions from our participants. I'm going to combine two questions into one that I think are very much related to the conversation we've been having here as a panel. Someone has asked a question about whether or not the strongest African universities or schools on the continent can perhaps come together to create a stackable micro-credential or certificate, and I guess aspirationally a full degree program online that is accessible to people from across the continent or outside of the diaspora in order to learn directly from the continent. And related to that, another question is perhaps a flagship program and using the PAVEU as a starting point to begin to take control of that narrative. So I'm going to put that out to any of our panelists who may like to respond, and that will be our singular question from our participants today before we return to the full plenary session. And I will have some closing remarks before we do that. So panelists, who would like to answer that combined question? Professor Yanka, let me unmute you. There we go. You're unmuted now. Go ahead.
Thank you, Lakeisha. One of the plans we have with the Pan-African Heritage World Museum project, and also related to my university, African University College of Communications, is to create out of the African Council, Academic Council that we've established, a Pan-African Academy. And even while we are getting ready to put the structure on the ground, it will take us another 2 years. We plan to run some programs online, but that will be raising more awareness about the need to decolonize the academia, and also to bring this new awareness up. We will not impose it on the universities, but we think that if we start this online program and we have our, accredited professionals and scholars on this program, giving these lectures continuously every month, we'll be making a contribution towards the debate that we are having. But it is part of our plan to start the Pan-African University platform while we are waiting to get the museum itself on the ground.
وبينما نحن ننتظر ذلك، اسمحوا لي أن أقول أننا واحدا ممن أسسوا مؤتمر التراث العالمي الأفريقي بهدف الاستمرار في الوصول بهذه الآداب إلى المزيد من الوعي وتعميق الفهم والتفكير بشأن أفريقيا. لذلك قد تأسست هذه الجامعات بواسطة البعض الذين يتبعون الأنظمة الأوروبية، وإن واحدة من هذه الحركات التي بدأت هذه الخطة هي متابعة خطة أخرى. شكرا لك. في الجلسة القادمة أحاول سأقدم لك سؤالا آخر.
I would like just to add quickly.
لذلك سيتحدث مع البروفيسور محمد كامارا. نعم، أنني أريد أن أضيف إلى ما قاله البروفيسور يانكا. أعتقد أنه
start with a non-state institution. And I say that particularly because I'm from the Francophone side of Africa, which is seriously hampered by neo-colonial systems. All the accreditations and other bureaucratic, invisible bureaucratic hindrances when you're dealing with national public universities that are directly under the Ministry of Higher Education or Ministry of National Education, whatever the terminology happens to be in that country. There are so many roadblocks that have very little to nothing to do with the substance of academic education, research, and so on. So I believe with the Pan-African World Heritage Project, but also perhaps connecting that with the structure of the Pan-African University that has already institutes on different campuses in each of the 5 major regions in Africa. Perhaps at that level, we would be able to start it and bypass the state bureaucracies and the neo-colonial interferences that our public universities are still shackled by.
So Professor Aharone, I will invite you to give closing remarks on that because of your work on good governance, because it sounds like Professor Kamara has just identified a governance issue with institutions at the national level that can complicate our ability to come together across the continent and across the diaspora. Would you like to give closing remarks on our question before we return to the plenary session?
Thank you again. I think the AU Governance Campus project is a great start. And I know the bottlenecks that are involved in terms of how that Pan-African University will actually be structured and who would take on what leading role. I think once those things are thrashed out, it's a good start and stepping stone to making that type of initiative possible. And on this end, I think that the new things that are being highlighted now as quote unquote structural racism or institutional racism here in America is kind of shifting people's thinking a bit, and I would hope so, to realize that the role and relevance of HBCUs must change with the times. You know, it's not 1890, and we don't have to be thankful to someone for passing legislation. So, you know, what we do with Africa and how we coordinate things as a diaspora rests largely again on our shoulders to be innovative enough to think through the times, to ensure that these things that we've identified that's been there all the time, whether it's structural, institutional, or racial, or policy, you know, so now is the time. It's a great time because you'll find that people now who've not been talking about controversial things since the George Floyd incident, now they've been given a safety net underneath them. So, you know, everybody's talking about what the problem is. So within the critique of all of that, a great problem is what we as HBCUs and Black professors, how do we apply our intellectual capital? And a great part of that should be towards African engagement.
Thank you very much. And this brings us to the end of our panel for today. I thank all of the panelists and our keynote speaker for being here, for your wisdom, for your knowledge, and imparting it on all of us today. I know I have learned a great deal. I hope those of you who have been participating and watching have learned a great deal today. And I look forward to continuing the communal education tomorrow, the same time, for this panel to continue this conversation, at which point I hope that we can entertain more questions from the participants who join us. We understand not everyone will be able to join us today, but we hope that the conversation today has been invigorating enough to move you to come back again the same time, same place tomorrow. Thank you again to all of our panelists. It has been a joy and a pleasure today. And now we will turn things back over so that everyone can depart and go back to the plenary session for this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lakeisha. Musi, I don't know whether you are on. If you are on, kindly give us the wrap-up information. Thank you, Musi.
Sure. Oh my goodness. Thank you, Dr. Lakeisha Harrison, for graciously and seamlessly moderating this session. Professor Asante, Professor Kojoyanka, Professor Aharone, Professor Aurora Vergara, Professor Kamara. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, your remarks, and your insights on how we need to continue to strengthen the collaboration between HBCUs and African universities. And it starts with us, people. It starts with us. We have work to do, and y'all know it takes a village. So we need to suit up and rally together on this global initiative. It doesn't matter if there's a global pandemic of this coronavirus. We met today. We have action items to do. We're go-getters. We're going to get them. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining this session. Just to echo back to what Dr. Harrison said, for those whose questions were not answered, we will have time to address them tomorrow in tomorrow's session. Please refer to the website, diaspora.aau.org for the Zoom for tomorrow's session, and we'll continue having this open discussion on this topic. In addition, you're more than welcome to attend a different parallel session, so please do so. There's going to be breakout sessions tomorrow on the side meetings. We have business sessions and exhibitions, so please don't miss out. This is momentous, the first virtual Africa Diaspora Homecoming. Thank you all for your participation. Thank you for joining. We look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Musi. It was a great session with you and all our panelists. We want to announce that tomorrow's session would rather be 3 p.m. which is 11 EST and 12. Okay, I'm missing that all of that up. And so it's 3 p.m., not 4. Would be here early so that we can have a lot of time to ask our questions. And so thank you, Missy, for this great MC. Our moderator, Lakeisha, thank you very much. And to our panelists, it has been so much fun with you and insightful and educative with you. And so see you tomorrow, 3 p.m. would be here. Thank you very much and enjoy your evening. Bye. Prof. Aharone.
What did no, I will need
Prof, you're muted.
Or say, do we have a database where willing collaborators could contact relevant offices for contact?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you for today's session. It was great.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was a good one. And our questions were so much that we couldn't even finish answering all.
Yeah, tomorrow though.
Yeah, tomorrow we'll continue with that. Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. I'm trying to log back to the other session, so
yeah.
I didn't even realize I was still here.
No, I think we are all done. We don't need
For
to
today?
go back. Yes, we are all done. We'll just come back tomorrow at 3 p.m. GMT.
Oh, so that's 11.
Yes, 11 Eastern time and 12 CST.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I was thinking it was 3. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prof. All right. Bye.
All right.